storm, the high near 81. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
It's 63 at O'Hare. Next news, 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the Money Hour radio show, Saturday afternoons at 3 on AM 560, The Answer. Brought to you by Pearshell Financial Group.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Boy, we have much economic news to discuss, beginning with the Fed cutting interest rates by a quarter point yesterday, to which they got this response from the president. Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve fail again. No guts, no sense, no vision, a terrible communicator. The Fed also revised up just ever so slightly, a tenth of a point, their projected GDP growth for the year, up from 2.1% to 2.2%. How much will either one of these events matter when it comes to our continued economic growth, and how much will it inform 2020 in the presidential election? We'll put that question to our friend Steve Moore, Wall Street Journal columnist, economist, author of the book Trumponomics, Inside the America First Plan to Revive Our Economy. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, guys. Good morning.
So is President Trump right that Jay Powell has no guts, no sense, and no vision?
Well, the Fed has been behind the curve now for 6-9 months. I mean, they made huge mistakes at the end of 2018 when they were raising rates and caused that crash in the stock market. You know, the big issue here is whether you think the fear going ahead is inflation or deflation. And, you know, I lived through the 1970s. I remember the, sky-high inflation rates and the 20% mortgage rates. But we're now in a totally different world where, the commodity prices have been falling. We've been seeing the Fed has consistently the inflation rate has consistently come in below, its target of about 2%. So we've been having, inflation come in at closer to about 1%. And by the way, when you take into account, quality improvements of products, so that means we're practically at zero inflation. And it's a dangerous world. We got to get more dollar liquidity into the economy, and in part, by the way, because of the success of Trump's policies. Everybody wants to invest in the United States now. There's a big demand for dollars. And yeah, the Fed should have cut rates by 50 basis points. I'll simply say this. I mean, Trump basically said, well, we should go to negative interest rates. I'm totally opposed to that. I think it would be terrible. I mean, Germany has negative interest rates, and they're in a recession. So I don't go as far as Trump does, but I do think they should have probably cut by more than 25 basis points.
Do you think President Trump is pleased with this move yesterday?
Well, it was totally expected, Amy. I mean, everybody knew that this was coming. So that's why there was no market reaction whatsoever to this, because the Fed did exactly what, they had announced they were going to do. The big story was the running out of money at some of the banks. This was the front page story yesterday in the Wall Street Journal that the New York Federal Reserve Bank had to dump money into the markets so that there was enough cash for banks, and so that's a kind of a scary situation. The economy is healthy. I mean, let's be very clear. I mean, we've got a very strong economy. It's actually picked up a bit. The big news of this last week was industrial production number was really good, much higher than anybody expected. A lot of people thought we were headed to a manufacturing recession. All of a sudden, we got this blockbuster number. So, I mean, think about this. We are living in a pretty golden age. Lowest inflation rates ever, lowest interest rates ever, lowest unemployment rate ever, highest stock market ever. It's a pretty blockbuster economy we have right now.
It is an underappreciated problem that is getting more reporting now, more attention now, is per the NFIB survey, record percentage of small business owners reported having difficulty finding qualified workers in August. 57%, including 89% of those hiring or trying to hire found few or no qualified applicants for the positions they were trying to fill, according to the NFIB survey. The construction industry had the highest share of owners reporting hiring difficulties.
Yeah, there's a good article by my friend Eddie Puster in the Wall Street Journal on exactly that point, that, this is the constraint on the economic growth right now. We got, I forget the exact number, something like 120,000 jobs in the last, the employment report. And that's below the 150 or so we'd like to see. I mean, it's a decent number, but it's not a great number. And people are saying, "Oh, the economy's slowing down." That's not an indication of the economy slowing down, in my opinion. We have plenty of jobs. There are 7.3 million jobs that are unfilled in the United States today. That's more than the entire population of the entire, Chicagoland area. The problem is, as you just said, Dan, that the employers are literally running out of workers to hire. And how do we get people off the sideline?
Yeah.
How do we get people
how do we do
skills?
that? How do we do that?
Well, First of all, it's a huge indictment of our education system. That we do have a lot of people. By my estimate, there are about 12 million people who have employable ages, between the ages of 22 and 65, that could be and should be working, but that aren't working. And part of that is because we're graduating kids from college that have degrees in psychology and sociology and ethnic studies and things like that. That there's zero demand for that. Nobody cares if you have a sociology degree. So we should get kids the skills they need. I love this idea, by the way. I think it was an Obama idea, and Trump's picked it up, of apprenticeship programs. If you're 21, 22 years old, and you can become an electrician or a carpenter, or you can become a mechanic, or you become an engineer, my God, you'll have people beating down your door to hire you. That's part of the problem. Part of the problem is the welfare state. The welfare has become a substitute for working, and we should have work requirements for all these programs. And then we needed more immigration. We need more legal immigration. We need more skilled people coming into this country and filling the jobs that are necessary. And we all know the immigrants who come in legally, they're the hardest working people in the world. They're great workers. They're smart people. My friend Larry Kudlow calls them the brainiacs. But it's not just the engineers, but we need people who can do the hard work, the grunt work in this country that a lot of Americans won't do.
The UAW strike report out that your friend Larry Kudlow may be quietly having talks with GM management, trying to facilitate an agreement to end the auto workers strike. What's your view on the administration intervening even as a facilitator, number one? And number two, what's your view on the posture GM should take with respect to UAW and what's on the table?
Well, gosh, that's a tough question. I mean, look, I think, number one, I have no problem with the administration playing a role of, a convener and trying to bring these two sides together. I mean, we don't want this strike to go on. It's not good for management. It's not good for workers. And so, no, I think that's a perfectly appropriate thing to do. I mean, you don't want the government to put the gun to these people's head and tell them what they have to do, but to try to bring them together, bring them to the table so this gets resolved, that's good. I think UAW, this is like the last grasp for the UAW. It's ironic, isn't it, Dan and Amy, that this is going on at a time when 4 or 5 of their major leaders are under indictment for stealing from the unions and not acting in the best interest of the workers they're supposed to be representing. This is a highly corrupt union, where the union bosses have not acted in the interests of their workers, and they live lavish lifestyles. And so I think that, look, the auto industry is changing a lot. We're moving towards automated cars, and many of those may not be built in Detroit. I think, as I read it, GM has offered a pretty good deal for these workers, and I'm sort of surprised they've walked away from the table. They're taking a big risk here.
GM, they poured gas on the fire because they dumped health care now for striking workers. So I don't know if that's going to help things over. And then also 1,200 people in Canada lost their jobs because they're not receiving the parts from America that they need to put cars together.
Well, here's the thing, though, too, is, what can GM afford? CNBC noted GM uses far fewer temporary, non-union contracted workers, only 7% of the total workforce, than the average U.S.-based foreign car manufacturer. Also pays out much more in profit sharing, has the last 3 years.
And they average Yeah, the average worker made, I think, at the Wall Street Journal report, about $12,000 last year just from the profit sharing.
10,007.
They're making about 75,000. They're making these are well-paid workers. Now, look, I'm not taking sides in this. I mean, I don't know enough, but it's the idea that these are workers that are working they're making $40-50 an hour in some cases, and that's a high salary, and many of them making $100,000 a year. And if I were one of these UAW workers, I'd be really worried. Hey, I may not get my job back. If this goes on too long. So that's a big risk. And this is the first major strike, in a long time, and we'll see how it fares out. Before we go, I want to mention one other thing because I want to take your temperature on another big issue, if I may. I am so infuriated by what is going on by both parties, Dan. I mean, I want your reaction to this about this war against high tech. Whether it's Apple or Google or Amazon or Facebook, and we've got an antitrust. You've got the 50 state attorney generals. Now you've got Congress asking these CEOs of these companies, tell us your business strategy, why your communications with all these other firms, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, here we have 5 of the greatest companies in the world. And by the way, I hate Facebook. I don't have a Facebook account. I hate their politics. But the idea that we're going to have government regulators come in and tell them what they can and can't do and sue them for antitrust in a technology world where everything is changing so quickly. And by the way, they say Google, they're accusing Google of being anti-consumer. My God, I get to use Google every day for free. How is this gouging consumers? And I want your guys' reaction to the antitrust allegations against these companies.
All right, Selfie King. Here's my reaction. I was at Judson University.
I really wanted Amy. Wanted Amy's reaction.
Okay, well, fine. No.
I was working on my 60 seconds of crazy.
She was posting on Facebook when you were talking.
Right, saying Stephen Moore hates Facebook.
She's reporting you to Mark Zuckerberg, so now you're in trouble. But
banned for life.
I was actually at Judson University here in Elgin yesterday talking about a range of issues for our Constitution Day event. Right. And so, of course, big tech came up.
Oh, yeah.
And no, I mean, I'm in complete agreement with you. I find Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg and Larry and Sergey, I find them detestable. I find them smarmy and detestable. But the whole point of our Constitution, as we were talking about this, and our rights in a free society as Americans is you're supposed to protect the rights of the detestable. You can't just, I don't like somebody, so their rights are gone. And I don't put them, and so I think we're coming from the same page because monopolies don't exist in the private sector. Monopolies only exist with government sanction.
You're 100% correct. There is no such thing as the only monopolies. I mean, if we want the antitrust people to go after people, go after the public schools, go after Amtrak, go after the postal service. I mean, the technology world is the Wild West. Anybody can compete with any company, and there are 15 different browsers out there. If you don't want to use Google, I mean, Dan and Amy, my view is nobody puts a gun to your head and makes you use Google or Facebook. Or that's what I said. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't like Facebook, but I want the government telling them what they can and can't do, and that's I'm much more worried about big government than I am big business.
Totally. I mean, if you don't like the minders at Google and Facebook, just wait till you get the state to replace them. But there is one issue though too. This is not to say that they should get special treatment either, and so there's enough evidence that's come out thanks to James O'Keefe and others that Google is making editorial decisions, are acting as a publisher. So I do think that they should be stripped of their indemnification with respect to libel and defamation cases. Strip them of that. Strip them of that protection. And I also am persuaded by Dr. Bob Epstein, who testified at the same Senate subcommittee a couple of months ago that Dennis Prager testified at, about Google essentially committing commercial fraud, and that they should disclose should be transparent about the algorithms in terms of the searches they're generating. So if you give me those two things, then I think we're okay.
Yeah, and by the way, that should be disclosed to the public. And if you're offended by those algorithms, and by the way, they do discriminate against conservatives and conservative information, then just don't use it. they're in danger of losing their customers. And look, in this world, customers are king, right? If you decide you have a lot of voting power by just deciding whether you want to go into that store or not go into that store, and that's the way to regulate this, in my opinion.
All right. Well, let's end on agreement. Steve Moore, Wall Street Journal columnist and, of course, economist. The book, Trumponomics, Inside the America First Plan to Revive Our Economy. Thanks for joining us, Steve.